This animation is exclusively for assignment purposes for EDR 631.22, Policy and Adult Learning. My personal journey with prior learning assessments did not start out in my favor. I was in fact quite defeated by the initial process in consultation with my academic advisor. I had discovered the Masters of Education program at the University of Calgary, and I was excited that the program directly related to my current position as a nursing educator at a local community college. The program was focused on expanding my own knowledge in the field of adult education. I contacted the U of C to discuss my options as an applicant with a prior learning assessment and recognition, or a PLAR, as I did not possess an undergraduate degree. I do, however, hold several post-secondary courses in education and science, as well as a licensed practical nurse diploma. I was immediately discouraged by the university from applying for this program, as I did not possess the educational credentials to support my educational learning goals. Feeling defeated, repeatedly, I withheld my application. 1 year had gone by and I could not stop thinking about the MEd program and how I desired to pursue this education. I was working in a post-secondary environment. I loved what I was doing, and I wanted to do and learn more. I was determined to not let a few rejections deter my educational goals that would help me and my learners ultimately assist in the future of our nurses, particularly as this program advertised a PLAR option. The Master of Education program PLARs criteria read, "In exceptional circumstances, individuals who do not meet formal academic requirements but who have significant life achievements may be considered for admission into the program. The candidates must provide the relevant graduate program with evidence demonstrating a potential to undertake successfully the proposed program of studies." The following year, I decided that this is what I wanted, and I had to at least try and achieve this goal. February 1st, 2014 was the application deadline. This was also the same day that I was departing on a 2-month trip to Africa that included an 8-day trek up the world's tallest freestanding mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. The day before my trek began at midnight, I was reading emails through a very unstable internet connection. I received an email from the U of C indicating one of my reference letters had not come through. With less than 7 hours remaining before my trek, I was panicked. I was, however, fortunate enough to have a very understanding academic advisor. Ironically, the same individual whom over a year earlier had advised me that this program was not the right fit for me. While I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in a blizzard, my advisor was able to track down all of my required documents, reference letters, to complete my application. When I arrived in Moshi, Tanzania, 8 days later, after summiting Kilimanjaro, I could barely walk. I had an email waiting stating that my application had been submitted. I was relieved. Then, on April 9th, 2014, I received a letter of acceptance into the Masters of Education program specializing in adult, community, and higher education. I was ecstatic. Increasingly, post-secondary institutes are allowing the use of PLARs as acknowledgement of previous knowledge and are granting credit towards formal credential-bearing programs. This is a result of an increase in demand from student bodies to give credit where credit is due. My PLAR story has a positive outcome. In the end, I was able to utilize my prior learning and knowledge to advance my own educational goals. Unfortunately, this is not always true for many marginalized individuals, such as immigrants. Canadian immigrants are often provided with a disservice related to prior learning recognition, as foreign credentials are often disregarded and deemed unacceptable, leaving the overall experience to be quite discouraging and demoralizing. Despite claims that prior learning assessments and recognition, PLAR, can act as a transformative social mechanism and a means of social inclusion for these marginalized individuals, Canadian immigrants, PLARs have become a serious barrier to adult learning rather than a facilitator. The truth is that many marginalized Canadians are highly educated, formally or informally, however are often considered unqualified, whether for employment purposes or for further pursuits of education. Canadian Business published a report in 2014 of the top 100 jobs in Canada. It is estimated that nearly 75% of these jobs require a post-secondary degree. Frankly put, this indicates that approximately 3/4 of Canadians' top 100 jobs are inaccessible to 77.3% of working-age Canadians as a result of not possessing a degree. It is becoming a popular trend in society that in order to succeed in life, a post-secondary education is required. This leads to the assumption that this prestigious lifestyle can only be achieved with the possession of a degree. The fact is that individuals in possession of a degree are part of a unique group of Canadians, members of an elite class, a class of individuals whom are considered prestigious, highly educated, and successful, based on the credentials that they possess. These credentials, a degree, signifies membership into the elite club of degree holders. With this extraordinary membership, access is granted into a world of social prestige and networking, power, and wealth. Unfortunately, access to the club is a rarity for the majority of Canadians, and they are denied access into this club. A study conducted by Statistics Canada in 2010 indicated that only 20.9% of working-aged Canadians aged 15 or older are in possession of a university degree, 14.4% being a baccalaureate degree, and a mere 6.5% possessing a credential exceeding a bachelor degree. If 20.9% of Canadians are educated, does this indicate that the remaining 79.1% of Canadians are uneducated, are not successful, and are living in low income? Statistics Canada reported in 2011 that 9.7% of Canadians aged 18 to 64 are classified as low income after taxes, and 13% of individuals before taxes. Low income is determined according to marital status, single versus family, and separated by province. It is based on after-tax incomes of each provincial median. Households are classified as low income if their after-tax income is less than half of the median national income, which in 2012 for a family of 4 was $41,568. Posted in the Globe and Mail, this chart from Statistics Canada shows provincial incomes for the low-income bracket families and singletons. If we look closer at the education of Canadians, we will find that in fact the number of educated individuals may be much higher than 20.9%. The fact is, according to Statistics Canada, 64.1% of Canadian adults aged 25 to 64 hold a post-secondary qualification. What is meant by a post-secondary qualification? These are individuals who possess some form of post-secondary credential, such as a degree. Statistics Canada outlines the loose criteria used to determine an individual's educational credentials. A disclaimer, however, acknowledges that the stated criteria does not in fact give credit or include all education of Canadians. However, they are satisfied that it is sufficient and that it gives a general measure of educational attainment. So is it safe to assume that individuals with some post-secondary education and not in possession of a credential or recognized credential such as a foreign credential would then not be included in this data? To degree or not degree, prospective post-secondary students are led to believe that a 4-year degree is indispensable, and without one they will be at a disadvantage in the job market. Furthermore, in many instances, a 4-year degree is considered not sufficient and a higher level postgraduate credential is required. Is there some truth to this? Possibly. Looking at the previous mentioned 100 top Canadian jobs, this would allude that there would be some truth to this statement. What then is the purpose of education? As Spencer indicates, the purpose of academic education is knowledge exploration and creation, the gaining of insights and understandings. In short, earning, but the outcome and importance of formal education is increasingly seen as the credential. If the common goal is to receive a credential, then what does that credential provide the individual with? Education is about networking, who you know and where you'll go. Hedges refers to the prestige of education and its participants as members of an elite club. Once an individual has gained access into the club, they have entered the gateway into a pathway for success and privileged employment. Many elitists are gaining access through social class and wealth. Education then becomes about networking and elite memberships, and not about acquiring knowledge. Hedges argues that the aforementioned perks of the degree are often disguised as wisdom, but does not necessarily transfer into the real-life applications. Many elitists will acquire their degree and graduate with honors, however lack actual insight and critical knowledge in the outside world, which ascertains what looks good on paper or a resume, such as a prestigious education from a top-ranked post-secondary institute, is not always a good representation of knowledge or conducive to the best applicant. Hedges attributes that major problems in the world today correlate directly to the disdain of honest intellectual inquiry from top elite schools. Herein lays the problem, with many learners' central focus of education being obtainment of a credential rather than knowledge acquisition. Simply put, post-secondary graduates lack knowledge despite years of education. Hedges points out that many corporate heads have gleaming educational resumes yet lack critical application and thought processes. He further suggests that many high-ranking individuals are extremely underqualified for the positions that they hold, which has a direct impact on society, politically, economically, and socially. Many graduates lack the ability to question and think critically, as stated by Hedges. They do not have the capacity for critical reflection. Students are looking for an education that will yield employment or an elite position, not an education that will enrich and challenge their minds. Students seek tangible vocational credentials. Derezajewicz comments on the great breach in education, which he and many other educators have lost sight of the main goal of education, to make minds, not careers. University priorities do not always focus on educating to great depths either, but rather focus on enrollment and creating graduates that satisfy the workforce. As a result, a class of less motivated learners has emerged, learners that are less motivated to learn beyond the minimum course requirements, and focus is simply driven to obtain the credential, to gain employment. This puts potential employers in an awkward position, as applicants may present a resume with gleaming credentials, however lack knowledge and critical thought. What is written on paper can be deceiving, and employers may not quite get what they are led to believe on paper. As a result, many employers have implemented pre-employment assessments that attempt to provide a glimpse of the potential employee's knowledge, work ethic, and extent of qualification for the position, a sneak peek, if you will, for the potential years of work to come. This tactic can also be effective to gauge if an individual lacking a requested credential, particularly in instances when a job posting requests an applicant with higher credentials than are actually required for the job. Employers often want applicants to be highly educated as well as be able to think and interact critically. What employers want is not necessarily an employee with glowing credentials, but rather an individual that can competently and critically complete the job requirements. A possible solution is a recognition of prior learning, RPL. Perhaps the appropriate applicant may possess previous informal life or work experience but lacks a credential. This can still result in a highly qualified applicant. Prior learning recognition can be a useful tool in acknowledging an individual's past experience and giving credit where credit is due. The Government of Alberta traditionally defines a PLAR as an appraisal tool that can be used to evaluate an individual's degree of informal knowledge and skills. An RPL, or recognition of prior learning, is an assessment that recognizes knowledge on 3 levels: formal learning, non-formal learning, and informal learning. Each level of recognition defines the type of prior learning. Formal learning refers to education obtained from post-secondary institutes that received educational credit. Non-formal learning is knowledge obtained through professional in-services, on-the-job training, or non-credit continuing education courses. Lastly, informal learning refers to experiences obtained through life and/or work. Despite this clearly stated criteria, PLARs are not always accepted or welcomed into formal education. A significant amount of research exists on how to convince traditional educational institutions and elitist academics to be accepting of PLARs. Such traditionalists raise critique as to the extent that adult learning can in fact be measured or exchanged, and whether or not all learning is credit-worthy. Debates such as use value versus exchange value have emerged, suggesting that not all knowledge is exchangeable into credit. Many organizations within Canada will participate in PLAR programs to increase access to skilled individuals and social groups that may have previously been disadvantaged or underrepresented. A particular group that faces challenge in previous recognition is Canadian immigrants. Anderson and Gao claim PLAR assessments for new Canadians govern and divide classes of knowledge and competence into 2 categories, labeling individuals as accepted or non-accepted. As Paulo Freire may indicate, this type of assistance, when the oppressor, immigration, aids in the oppressed, the immigrant, could actually do more harm than good. referring to it as false generosity. Ferrer might assert that the primary motive is not good-willed intentions, but rather to maintain the status quo and to keep the oppressed helpless. Furthermore, Ferrer argues that experience such as with PLARs is the starting point that is limiting and has the potential to create a culture of silence. Offering assistance to individuals by way of PLAR, this can provide false hope of recognition. Canadian immigrants often only find out following the completion of the PLAR process that previous credentials and experiences are in fact rejected, often at a great expense to the applicant. Immigration in Canada has a long history of superficial discrimination as a way of maintaining social and ideological control and determining desirable versus undesirable individuals. This creates symbolic boundaries outlining both social and cultural parameters. Nearly 30 years later, the careful selection of immigrants continues, with favor being given to an economic class of immigrants, particularly highly educated immigrants who are considered to be skilled workers. The logic that fueled this careful selection was around the utilization of human capital. Often referred to as credentialism, human capital nearly guarantees protection of the most valuable products, people. Jobs in North America tend to be a focal point for North Americans as a great sense of pride. With the admittance of highly skilled immigrants, one would assume that a PLAR would be a great tool to assist in fueling the Canadian economy. On the contrary, although immigrants admitted into Canada contribute to the economy with employment, the job opportunities available do not always fully utilize the skill set that many immigrants possess. Many immigrants experience what is referred to as de-skilling and de-credentializing of previous experience. This is in contrast to non-immigrant Canadians seeking prior learning and skill recognition. So immigrants are granted entrance into Canada based on one's educational status. However, once admitted, any previous credentials become irrelevant. This would seem rather pretentious. Wouldn't you think? It is important to note that Canadian immigrants aged 25 to 64 account for 34.3% of Canadian adults with university degrees. I would pose the question, how many of these individuals are working to the potential of their qualification in Canada? One solution is again to give credit where credit is due, but to also ensure inclusivity of all individuals, particularly foreign educated immigrants and refugees, a progression that Canada seems to be lacking in. Although Canada is recognized internationally as committing to social justice and diversity as an open and tolerant society, a great deal of critique remains. Canada falls short of recognizing the foreign credentials and work experience of immigrants and refugees. Many studies on the education of Canadian immigrants conclude that the significant number of highly educated individuals are subjected to decredentializing prior learning and experience upon admittance into the country. This is resulting in many immigrants and refugees experiencing downward social and occupational mobility. Unfortunately, encouraging PLARs for immigrants is not a simple or positive solution. The process involved in accessing recognition is far from simple. The PLAR process itself for many immigrants is not only demoralizing, but it also lacks national standardization. Furthermore, the process of assessment and upgrading can result in significant financial burden to the applicant. Policy is currently underway at my current place of employment at Bow Valley College to promote PLARs for internationally educated nurses. This educational pathway recognizes registered nurses whom hold RN licensure in a foreign country. This credential allows for nurses to have their foreign credentials assessed. Once assessed, credit will be given for the areas of competence, and learners will be required to take a set of mandatory nursing courses. Preparatory course workshops on various topics are provided and available to internationally educated practical nurse learners on a regular basis throughout the year, however, are optional. Learners are able to work at their own pace in accordance with their own preferred learning style and their own timeline. Continued support through the college's Learning Resource Center is also available. Having worked directly with this program over the past decade, I have seen the changes that have been implemented to upgrade archaic policy and to honor foreign credentials. This demonstrates that PLARs can work and that acceptance of foreign credentials can prove to be a win-win situation for the institution, for revenue, for employers who can fill a vacant position, and for the nurse whom has been granted credit for previous achievements. As a nation, Canada needs to reevaluate policies related to immigration and prior learning and experience recognition. In the modern day of globalization, there is little justification in rejecting foreign credentials. Highly educated individuals are arriving in Canada on a regular basis. It is time to give credit where credit is due. Instead of time and money being spent on PLAR rejections, efforts could be better spent on implementing new policy in relation to the standardization of PLARs, as well as actual recognition. Canada could benefit substantially from improved acceptance of foreign credentials.